All right, it's time to hear my favorite words in basketball show history. Give me the two words that you're going to say. I know you're going to say it, so say it, say his name.
Primetime Pettiford. Holy
Uh,
crap.
yeah, how good was he tonight?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, he
Unbelievable.
was. He was. That's Taylor Corn. I'm Jim Dunaway. Basketball show brought to you by our friends at Culver's Late Night. I don't know why we played this game so late, and I was worried in the first half that maybe Auburn was sleepwalking. We'll get into all that. We'll get to your comments. Don't forget to go by Culver's. They bring you our basketball show. But my goodness, Tahaad Pettiford, when you needed him, he put on a show. Johni was great the whole night. Denver Jones was great. Between the three of them, they set an Auburn record, first time NCAA tournament history that they've had three guys score 18 or more. They end up all three with 20 or more. 22 for Broome, 20 for Denver, 20 for Pettiford. You take it away, T. Auburn wins it, and they're in the Elite Eight.
I did not feel good with about 12-ish minutes left. And I texted Forrester. I believe it was Forrester that I texted, and I said, we need Tahad to take over. And he did just that. I mean, he gets rattled by nothing. He's fearless. The defense stepped up. They started playing lockdown defense. I don't even know what to say right now. I mean, they flipped a switch. They flipped a switch, and they talked about um how much the crowd was beneficial to them when they were playing defense in the second half when they needed to get stops. They were going on a run, but they were down 9 at one point.
Yeah, they
And I
they were down 9T with 12 minutes and 20 to go in the game, not just at one point.
Yeah,
12
yeah, yeah.
20 to go in the game, and Bruce Pearl called a perfect timeout. And from that point on, you guys dominated it.
Yeah, I just got my little sheet of paper out that I was taking notes on. Michigan led with, like you said, 12:26 to go in the second half. They had a 9-point lead. Auburn went on a 20-2 run.
Yeah.
They were making stops. They were hitting shots, but at the start of the game, they weren't able to make stops defensively. They were turning the ball over in uncharacteristic amount. I mean, the majority of their games they've had single digit turnovers this season. And I believe I have the box score right here. I believe they have in the first half 11 or no, 10 in the first half, which is very, very uncharacteristic of this team. I think that they looked like they were playing so fast that, I mean, they were just being a little bit careless with the ball.
Yeah.
They stepped up, though. The fight that this team showed was incredible.
I would tell you that I thought they were playing too fast as well, and I thought maybe it was just because they were so amped up. I saw folks talking about that were at the game. They were talking about it is so loud in here. It's like Neville East over here. It felt like a home game, deserving so because you're the number one overall seed. And it looked like in the first half. I even texted you. I was like, "This is the pace of this game is insane. It's not the way Auburn usually plays, and they can play fast, but they don't usually play that sloppy." To your point, they average 8 turnovers a game. They had 10 in the first half, but they only ended up with 15 in the game. And I thought that was the key is they controlled the turnovers in the second half. You were in the locker room. Before we get to comments from the fans here, what were they saying in the locker room? I would imagine that run that, by the way, to end the game ended up being 39-17 to end the game. And they doubled their points from that timeout. They had 39 points. In the last 12 minutes, they scored 39 more points. So they doubled their points after that Bruce Pearl timeout. Pretty amazing stat there. What were the guys like in the locker room?
So Chad, this is something that stood out to me. Chad, the first question he was asked was, "You made it back to the Elite Eight. This is the third time that Auburn's ever made it. It's the first time since the 2019 Final Four run. How do you feel?" And he said, "That's great, but that was in the past." He said, "We have a game to win on Sunday." So he wasn't even trying to bask in the excitement. He said, "That's exciting, but that's not our goal at the end of the day." Tahaad is just he's so level-headed. He's so composed. I mean, he probably had 25 people cornering him into his little chair in front of his locker. And he was just sitting there, looking around, answering the questions, answering the questions like it was just a casual Saturday. And he was asked about he was asked about obviously making the Elite Eight, making more history, adding on to what's been a historic season for Auburn. And he kind of had the same reaction. Great, we won that game, but we've got more work to do. We need to get back in the gym and we need to start preparing for Michigan State. But one thing that I found very interesting was I asked him about the fight that he saw from, himself, his teammates. No one crumbled, no one folded when they were down 9 with, 12 minutes to go. And he said I had to remind the guys, I can come back to college. A lot of y'all can't. So, do you want this to be your last game or do you not? Which
Uh,
I thought was great because he said he gave the seniority, a lot of the older guys credit because he said, they've been here before. They've been, or not to the Elite Eight, but just in these type of situations. And he said, so it doesn't surprise me that, they had the composure and they had the fight to come back and end up winning the game. But he did say that he had to give him a little reality check and say, guys, let's remember what's on the line here.
Yeah, and on the line is the Elite Eight for Auburn, the number one overall seed, chalk in the South Division, South Region. It'll be one Auburn versus two Michigan State. The winner goes to the Final Four coming up on Sunday. Your comments coming up as we tell you about our friends at Culver's. It's never frozen patties, buttered buns. That butter burger's so good. I get mine with two patties. You can go with one, you can go with three, however you like it, right there at our friends at Culver's, Tattersall Park, and the Highway 150 near the Hoover Met ones are the ones closest to us. We love our friends at Culver's. Those custards are great. They're all over the place. Stop by Culver's. You have a hand raise. What do you want there?
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I felt like I needed to say something before we get to the comments, but Denver Jones, I think, deserves a lot of credit too. He and Tahaad were the ones that were hitting the big time shots, when it came down to crunch time. I thought that Chaney, I know that he had a couple, I don't know if you'd call them the turnovers. I know one of them counted as a turnover against Tahaad, but he had a couple butterfinger moments, but he was playing so hard. He was playing so hard. He forced a couple turnovers early in his very early minutes. Um, this team, they fought. They fought so hard. They were all playing so hard. Things weren't going. There were a lot of questionable calls that the players were obviously upset with, but they were able they were able to get over the mental aspect of the game and let go of the things that they can't control, the things that are out of their control, which is something, the mental state, the mental aspect of this team is something that we've talked about all season in terms of it can be very beneficial and it can be a positive, but it can also sometimes have a negative impact on their play. But I mean, I thought that everyone that stepped foot on the court played so incredibly hard. There was a number of mistakes that were made in the first half, but I mean, yeah, I just saw that Caleb said Cardwell was the defensive MVP tonight. Yes, like I mean, we can't give enough credit to everyone. We're gonna end this, and I'm gonna feel like I forgot to give someone some praise, but I just feel like everyone stepped up when their name was called.
Yeah, Cardwell is the defensive MVP, is what Caleb is saying there, and they were able to sort of keep him back as a rim protector during a lot of that game there, and it was hard for Michigan to get to the rim. All right, so your comments here brought to you by our friends at Culver's. I will tell you, you mentioned Denver Jones along with Pettiford. At one point, those two combined for 16 straight points in the game when Auburn was pulling away there after they made their comeback. Those two together on a run of 16-0 by themselves, that was really key. NH3425, big key for Auburn was crashing the offensive boards early, was so critical tonight. Ken says this has to be one of the best seeding jobs in tournament history. 3 1 versus 2 and 1 versus 3 in the Elite Eight. So it is as chalky as I've ever seen. And that's good when you're number one Auburn because you're supposed to be here and you're still there. T Powell says this SEC run is amazing. Bruce Pearl, I know you didn't see the interview on CBS. He didn't really do an interview. He was a cheerleader. He was a cheerleader for Johni Broome. Then he was a cheerleader for Tahaad Pettiford, where I don't know what he called him. A little star, maybe, but it was an S word. And some people think he may have said a little shh. But he called him something. They laughed, and then Bruce started. How about the SEC? He started going SEC, SEC. It was an amazing little run there. Miles Kelly still got his rebounds today. Miles was 1 of 7 from three. Little T. He didn't have his shot, but he was doing so many other things to help contribute. Not in the stat sheet, but like a good teammate, he was hitting the boards and doing other things, getting it to the guys who were hot.
Yeah, and that's something that was also talked about in the locker room was the impact that a lot of these guys uh teammates were talking about when asked about just the team in general, the effort, the all out team effort. Were guys like Miles Kelly that had a massive impact on the game. If you look at the box score, you're not gonna see that. But his rebounding really, throughout almost the entire season, I feel like has been very, very consistent. And I can't remember. I think it may have been Cheney that said it was. Yeah, I think it was Cheney that was talking about how we're a nightmare team to scout because yeah, okay, so Miles Kelly went from hitting how many threes? 7 in their first game in Rupp. Now Tahaad takes over. Janai had a quiet 22 points and 16 rebounds. You never know. You never know who's going to have a good night.
That's right. And if you're taking Miles Kelly away, there's Denver and there's Todd Pettiford. John says, now this is the kind of fan I am. He's worried about the first half. One of the sloppiest first half ball games I've ever watched, but our team came through in the second half and kicked Michigan's tail. Let's start our next game fast and finish hot. Let's bring that championship to Auburn. That first half was so uncharacteristic. And it was going bad to start the second half until that timeout when they went on the run. Chad Baker Mazzara, I want to ask you about what you saw health wise before we get back to the comments. It looked like he had a back brace on during warm ups, or at least when he came out to the bench. And he only played like half the first half. He didn't have the same rotation. He was in there fighting for a lot of the games, but he doesn't look 100% healthy to me. What can you tell the Auburn fans, just observation, you see Chad Baker moving around?
Yeah, he walked into the arena before, when Auburn arrived, and I couldn't tell exactly what it was because he had a jacket on, but you could see some sort of black back brace wrap around his waist. And then, like you said, he came out with a back brace on at halftime. And there was a play in the second half, and when they showed the replay inside of the arena, I'm assuming that was the same thing that was shown on the broadcast, but it was the foul that was called against, I believe it was against Jones, uh, 15 on Michigan that they went kind of went flying, they went sliding, and they zoomed in on Chad's face, and you could tell that he was grimacing, and that's kind of the nagging injury that he's had for a couple weeks now. When he was questionable on the availability report, I can't remember at the end of conference play. It's this, side back. I think it was from him taking a quote unquote kidney shot. So I don't know if it's just been a repetitive thing that's kind of turned into bruising, but he was fine in the locker room post game. I feel like it's just one of those things where he keeps getting, it's a physical game. He keeps getting bumped, and I think it's just kind of a over time. I'm guessing it's turned into some sort of bruise.
Jay says, "My goodness, primetime Pettiford was on his game tonight." NH3245 says the fadeaway by Pettiford and the foul. My gosh, what a great play that was. On the broadcast, they were screaming. All three of the CBS announcers and they were talking him up about playing basketball for a long, long time. And that's one thing that's happened. Pettiford's stock continues to rise and rise and rise. And I saw someone in our chat earlier say, whatever NIL the NBA is going to offer him, let's offer him more and keep him at Auburn for another year. It's never a guarantee that they're going to go to the NBA, even if they're being projected that way. Some guys want to stay in college. Some guys don't want to be the 28th pick. They want to play another year in college and be the 10th pick. So you never know if his days at Auburn are winding down. But my goodness, if he's only got 3 more games left and he leaves with a national championship, much like Carmelo Anthony did at Syracuse, then it's job well done. Scott says, just tweeted an epic Bruce line from post game on Johni Broome's relationship with Tahaad. He's just sort of loving on that little shit. Quote, says Scott Forrester there. So you can go see that at Next Round Live. Forrester has sent that out for you there. Speaking of that, little T's locker room stuff coming up in a moment as well, at Next Round Live as soon as she's done here on our post game. That's brought to you by our friends at Culver's. We appreciate them so much. Also, the women's basketball tournament that is down at Legacy Arena started today, continues tomorrow and Sunday and Monday. You can get your tickets ncaa.com/WBB tickets. That's ncaa.com/WBB tickets. I'm up in Jersey. That's Little T in Atlanta covering the Auburn game tonight. Unspoken player of the game, Cardwell, dude was a beast on the glass tonight in there. Jay says, let's effing go. 3 players with 20 and that 34-8 close, sloppy start, but a great finish. I want to ask you about that because Michigan State now slightly better than Michigan. They had to fight to beat an Ole Miss team that Auburn has dominated 3 times this year, 73-70, the final on that one earlier. You were in the arena for that one. How do you think that one pairs up? I know they asked Bruce about this. He didn't want to talk about it yet. He hadn't had a scout on him yet. So I know you haven't had a scout on him yet
Nope.
either. But
Nope.
what do you think of Auburn, Michigan State right now? It's Bruce Pearl and Tom Izzo, 2 of the legends in the game.
I think that if Auburn plays like they did in the first half versus a Michigan State team on Sunday, they will not have a 1 point lead at halftime. And that's all I'll
Turnovers.
say for now.
Turnovers will not be an issue again, AU Dirty Bird says. And it is so uncharacteristic. This team doesn't have 15 turnovers ever. They average 8. And I sort of agree with him. I don't think you'll see that again. T Powell with a lot of emojis there. Pearl better fix the turnover issue by Sunday or MSU will run Auburn off the court. I don't
I
know.
don't
This
think it's
team
an
find
issue though, because
yeah.
or I mean it was a problem. I'm not saying it wasn't today, but I'm not necessarily concerned about it because this hasn't been a reoccurring thing. Like if you look at Auburn as a whole on on the season, turnovers haven't been a problem. In my opinion, that was very uncharacteristic what we saw tonight.
Thomas says, I gambled and bought tickets for me and the kids weeks ago for this Sunday's game. War Damn Eagle. I saw that Auburn team we saw a month ago finally. So good for you, Thomas. Got to go see them and keep going this weekend. Get there and see if you can. Everyone dropping some call gods in there and some War Eagles there this evening. Looking forward to what will happen on Sunday, all the fans there. Okay, a couple of more comments here before we wrap it up and let Little T start editing so you can enjoy your Auburn Tiger players from the locker room here. Johni Broome, you mentioned it, got his 4th foul with 6:51 to go in the game. At that point, he had 21 and 16. He ends up 22 and 16. And even with their 2 big guys, I thought Broome was dominant as usual inside. He was the leading scorer and the leading rebounder for Auburn tonight.
Yeah, I mean, there's still some of those little bunnies around the rim that aren't falling that we've seen fall for the majority of the season, but I do think that just speaks to the depth of this team is I mean, yes, he still had 22 points, but when he went out with, 6 minutes left, he and Chad both had 4 fouls. And I heard on the they were talking about it in the arena, the broadcast team, after Janai went out, and I'm not by any means trying to say that Auburn is a better team without him on the court. So do not misunderstand what I'm saying. But I think after he went off the court, Auburn went on an 8-2 run, I think it was. So I'm more so complimenting the depth of this team, and I think they're confident in themselves. They're confident in their teammates, no matter who's on the court.
Matthew makes a great point. Auburn has played basically 1/4 of a complete game in this NCAA tournament, yet they're already in the Elite Eight. They really haven't played a complete game yet, have they?
No, not far from. There have been sparks. There have been moments where they've looked good, but no, they have not played a complete game or anywhere close to it.
Yeah. Auburn swept the board, says TMNC. 19 to 10 on the offensive rebounds, so 9 extra possessions there, and a double-digit victory in the rebounding, as you would expect. Usually from Auburn, a great rebounding team, but I guess there was some concern, Taylor, because of the two big men for Michigan. Now, Danny Wolf led them in scoring again. He had 20. And for a brief moment, when they had that 9 point lead at 12-20, I was thinking to myself, this Danny Wolf guy's a problem.
Yeah, there were the Michigan fans in State Farm Arena were chanting Danny Wolf on repeat for a stretch when he went on a little bit of a scoring run. But yeah, I mean, he was a problem. He was good. He was good and he had a good game. But I think rebounding was something that this team was focused on going into the game. They wanted to give up as few second chance points as possible. And they did a good job of that because they only gave up 9. So I think that was something that in the first half when things weren't looking great, that was a bright spot was their rebounding.
I agree with Jake. I think Auburn's post play will end up winning this next game against Michigan State. I think Johni will be just too much inside against Michigan State. I don't think they have the size, and to be able to get 22 tonight against these two big guys. What will he do against Michigan State coming up this weekend? AU Big Bob says Michigan State's a terrible 3 point shooting team. If Auburn can make threes like they did in Rupp, they will win. They shoot well at State Farm, but tonight, Taylor, they were 3 of 16 in the first half from three. They ended up 8 of 28. Guys like Miles was 1 of 7 from three. Pettiford was actually 2 of 7 from three. And Denver Jones, though, was a cool 4 of 7, but 8 of 28. They're usually a better 3 point shooting team than that. So Miles having a little bit of an off night, as were most of the Auburn guards from distance, but they were really good inside that line.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they were taking an uncharacteristic number of threes at the beginning of the game, and Michigan's gonna give you a chance to do that. And I think they were kind of falling into the trap of over utilizing the space that they get because that they don't take that many 3 point shots. They do not take that many 3 point shots. They're successful when they drive to the basket. So I think they were. I don't know if it was the excitement, if it was a little bit of jitters, if it was the environment that was. I feel like they were so amped up at the beginning of the game, and that's kind of what caused a lot of the turnovers. That's what was causing them to play so fast. That's what was causing a lot of the shots that you might be scratching your head wondering why they took. I don't know what it was, but there was no lack of effort. There was no lack of energy. There was no lack of fight from this team. So I think that is something that's encouraging moving forward.
Jeff said, I wonder if Bruce was purposely increasing the pace early on to tire Michigan out and beat them in the end right there. And Kevin, will end on Kevin's comment. The defense has really, really been good this year for Auburn. And you hold them when it's 48-39 and you end up winning the game tonight and you just shut them down the stretch. It's just a very impressive defensive outing from the Auburn Tigers, and it travels. So 48-39, you think you're in trouble. Bruce calls a timeout and you shut them down and you go on for an easy double-digit victory to move on to the Elite Eight again for this Auburn program. Third time in program history to the Elite Eight and first time since the Final Four season. Now, Auburn, this is your final chance to talk here for the night. We'll wrap it up. Now, Auburn is 40 minutes away from going back to the Final Four.
Yeah, I can't. I don't want those words to come out of my mouth because I'm a little superstitious and I don't want to jinx anything. But I'll comment on what Kevin said. I believe it was Kevin that just made that last comment on Auburn's defense, and I feel like Auburn's defensive effort has been a little bit overshadowed because of how electric their offense has been this season. And we're used to Auburn having a pretty good defense. The offense is what has been lacking in years past, and we've talked about it a number of times throughout the entire season. When their shots aren't falling, their defense is what's keeping them in games, and that showed up big time tonight.
All right. The SEC's got half of the Elite Eight, and maybe all four of them can make it to San Antonio, and we'll just have an SEC tournament part two down in San Antonio. All right. Taylor Corn doing great work. She's got about 3 more hours of work to do before she
Yep.
calls it a night. She'll be editing some stuff up tonight. She'll do some in the morning for you guys. So at Next Round Live to get all your Auburn players post game. Forster, as we speak right now, working to send out Bruce Pearl and the guys from the podium. It's all for you Auburn fans right there at Next Round Live, at Next Round Live. Thanks to our friends at Culver's. Always delicious. It's our friends at Culver's. Thank you for bringing us this basketball show post game. Have a great night, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow after Alabama and Duke.